Hi, I'm Sophie, and today I'm going to talk about a little something I like to call the starkid theory. For those of you who don't know, there is a theory called the Pixar theory, which was created by John Negroni and popularized on YouTube by creators like the Super Carlin brothers and Seamus Gorman and other people who talk about movie theory. Basically, the theory postulates that all Pixar movies are part of the same universe and created in the same world, and that they're all interconnected somehow. So with the starkid theory, my theory is that all 12 starkid musicals, either currently in existence or in production as of 2019, are connected somehow.
Just a fucking loop!
I put them in chronological order based on the time period that the movies seem to take place. Keep in mind that this is just a theory, these are my personal opinions, and they have not been confirmed by either of the Lang brothers or anyone who has been affiliated with starkid writing in any way. That said, I think I have a pretty good idea of what's going on, and I would like to share it with you today. So the first play in our chronology is Firebringer, of course.
This is the dawn of our time. We are womankind.
Firebringer is starkid's Stone Age musical and does sort of tell about the invention of fire and several other things, and also the population of the universe at large. I do believe that the starkid shows take place in an alternate universe, although some things that occur in universe are similar to things that occur in our own, obviously, but there are some major differences, which I will get to. So Firebringer, for those of you who don't know, just a quick recap, is the story of a tribe of early humans. The leader is Jamila. She is the peacemaker. Then there is Zazalil, who is our other main character. She is an inventor and is not the most dedicated worker. So there is a lot of butting heads between Jamila and Zazalil throughout the course of the show, but eventually they come together, and it is presumed at the end of the musical that Zazalil and Jamila are the forebears of human society as we know it. Another character that plays a large part in Firebringer is the character of Chorn, who throughout the majority of the musical is seen as sort of a less intelligent creature who can only say their name, Chorn, or that's the only word they can say, and so that's what the tribe's people call them, is Chorn. But it turns out that Chorn is actually a supernatural being of some kind, an alien who is sent to enlighten these early humans about things like fire, and has some sort of magic or other supernatural power that enables her to help the tribe's people. So I will come back to Chorn later, but she plays a very pivotal role in the starkid theory overall. The next show in the chronology skips forward in time quite a bit with Twisted, which I believe takes place in roughly, I don't know, the 15th century, let's say. Probably earlier than that, but it's hard to tell. And as with all starkid shows, there are, modern influences woven in, so pinpointing the exact time is a little difficult. With that said, Twisted clearly takes place after the events of Firebringer, because Firebringer introduces the idea that humans' first and foremost goal is to be as lazy as possible.
And until that happy day when we can be so lazy, I will work as hard as I possibly can to get us there, because that, my friend, is the spirit of human ingenuity.
And Aladdin seems to have bought into this idea.
Who would seek employment when life offers such enjoyment?
As he and the other townspeople seem to think that they don't need to do any work and that if they just wish hard enough, their dreams will come true, as shown in the opening number.
You've got to dream a little harder. When life won't go your way, simply dream a little harder. Trust me when I say that when you dream a little harder, you're sure to muddle through. Cause if you're good and you're attractive, no need to be proactive.
Good things will just happen to you.
And Jafar and Scheherazade really are the only two people that seem to understand that you must work for what you want, although Scheherazade definitely believes in magic, and Jafar has said multiple times that he does not believe in magic and instead only believes in science and reason.
But wishes are dreams, and dreams are pretend, so science and reason win out in the end.
This is an interesting dialectic and also something that is a major theme in the starkid theory. One of the things often shown is that there can either be magic or science. Magic versus science is one of the main conflicts in the starkid universe. While Firebringer incorporates both magic and science into its explanation of how things work, Twisted focuses mostly on magic, while Trail to Oregon focuses mostly on science. We do see some interesting things though, because both the son and the grandpa seem to be able to communicate with animals who we would normally not presume to be sentient. Of course, Aladdin's monkey and Jafar's parrot can both speak, but Jafar's parrot is shown mostly to copy the words of other people he hears, and we are not entirely sure what the origins of Aladdin's monkey are. In Trail to Oregon, only the son can understand the buffalo.
I can't shoot them, they're a family. And can't anyone else hear them talk?
And the grandpa cannot, which is interesting because later the grandpa can understand Cornwallis the lobster.
Hello. Titty Mitty.
Cornwallis.
That could be some sort of magical coincidence, or it could be a sign that something a little more sinister is happening. The next three shows are slightly peripheral to the rest of the starkid universe, but still relevant, as they are a Very Potter sequel, a Very Potter musical, and a Very Potter senior year in that order. A Very Potter sequel is, of course, the first in the chronology because it takes place during Harry's first year. Then a Very Potter musical is his second year, and a Very Potter senior year is their final year at Hogwarts. This also introduces a very strange phenomenon, which is Ron's blue headband. And we see in a Very Potter sequel that Ron gets this headband from Harry, who wears it to cover his scar, and then realizes that he doesn't need it because everyone in the magic world loves his scar.
You've got this. You know, man, everybody in the Wizarding World loves my scar. Why don't you keep it? Really? Wow. Looks good, man. Thanks.
He gives it to Ron, who is very appreciative of this gift. And then we see it on Ron in the next two shows. But then we don't see Ron again, but we do see the headband again. The headband next makes its appearance in Me and My Dick as Joey Richter's headband, which leads me to believe that somehow Ron Weasley and Joey Richter are connected. This also leads me to believe that somehow Joey Richter and Bug are connected, at least Bug's human form in Starship, because the human form of Bug, the Starship Ranger, is also seen wearing the blue headband. I'll come back to this a little later when I get to those two shows, but I just think that's an interesting thing to consider. We also see in the Very Potter musical series that animals can talk. We see this with Rumblewar, we see this with Frens, and we see this with Hedwig. Now, most animals in the starkid universe are not sentient and do not speak, except for the previously mentioned monkey and parrot. So I wonder if somehow there is a magical explanation to the fact that Titty Mitty could understand Cornwallis the lobster, and that Craphole could understand the buffalo family. It also seems to me as though after the events of Trail to Oregon, magic has gone underground, whereas before it was more out in the open, like in Twisted, magic was an accepted part of the universe. But more people adopted Jafar's way of thinking that science is real and magic is not, and so magic had to find a way to protect itself and decided that it would separate itself from the rest of the world in order to do that. Sometime after the events of the Harry Potter trilogy, we get the events of Holy Musical Batman. Now, Batman is interesting because we do see some sort of supernatural forces at work. But really the only superhero that has preternatural abilities is Superman, who we know is an alien who's come from another planet and landed on Earth. Batman doesn't have any superpowers, he just has
Bullshit butler who builds bullshit jets. Oh!
And other heroes we see, like the Green Lantern, have special powers, but they are not their own special powers. For example, Green Lantern has a ring that enables him to create anything that's green. However, it does seem to me that something more than just science is at work, because we have some villains like the Penguin, Poison Ivy, Chilly Willy, and Two-Face, who seem to be more than just skilled at technology and science, but rather have some sort of genetic mutation. It is mentioned also in Holy Musical Batman that the water supply has been poisoned several times.
This is even worse than when the Joker poisoned the water supply.
Or when Scarecrow poisoned the water supply.
Or when Killer Croc poisoned the water supply.
And I wonder if something connected with this has created some sort of thalidomide-like property that creates these superheroes and supervillains in Gotham City. It is because of this genetic mutation theory that I believe Me and My Dick is able to happen, because I don't think that Dick and Miss Cooter and the Hearts are just figments of the imagination of Joey and Sally. In fact, I believe that there has been so much genetic mutation that certain body parts have become anthropomorphic and are able to detach from their host bodies without much consequence. Dick is clearly visible to other people in the scene where he runs away and finds Big T and Weenie.
Hey, how's it going? Oh, gross, it's shit!
We also get scenes like Flight of the Pussies, which indicates that certain body parts can detach from their host bodies without major consequence.
Every night at the stroke of 3. Every night at the stroke of 3.
As I said before, I believe Ron Weasley and Joey Richter are somehow connected in this universe, and I believe that perhaps some of Ron's descendants were squibs, who then inherited the headband and passed it on to their seemingly muggle descendants, which is how Joey gets the headband. I also believe that Me and My Dick takes place around the same time as the characters from The Guy Who Didn't Like Musicals are in high school, and I believe that Sally and Joey are in high school in Clivesdale, and across the river, Emma and Paul and Ted and Bill are all in high school in Hatchetfield. With that in mind, I think that Black Friday, which is the StarKid musical that comes out later this year, Halloween of 2019 is when it will premiere, will serve as a prequel to The Guy Who Didn't Like Musicals and takes place in between Me and My Dick and The Guy Who Didn't Like Musicals. Now, Nick Lang has not confirmed whether it's a prequel or a sequel, but I believe a prequel makes much more sense because at the end of The Guy Who Didn't Like Musicals, it is shown that all the people of Hatchetfield have died. Therefore, there would be no people left in Hatchetfield to participate in Black Friday, and so it makes much more sense for it to function as a prequel. So Black Friday takes place in the interim where Emma is backpacking around the world, and all those contemporaries have graduated from high school. We see Becky Barnes, who I believe was the friend of Emma's older sister, and that's why Emma doesn't like her, because they were two straight A students, perfect, picture perfect, and Emma just wasn't that way. And I think, as we see in The Guy Who Didn't Like Musicals, was very jealous of her sister's put-togetherness, and so holds sort of a pointless grudge against the two of them because they were just different than her. We know in Black Friday so far that Becky Barnes is a local nurse at the hospital in Hatchetfield. We also know that there is a high school dropout, Lex Foster, who is trying to run away with her little sister Hannah. She has a boyfriend, Ethan Green, well, sort of boyfriend, and he is also going to run away with them to California. Lex and Hannah have a very alcoholic and seemingly neglectful, if not outright abusive, mom. And they live with her in a trailer park, and Lex is just desperate to get out of that toxic environment. I believe that the Tickle Me Wiggly doll is connected to the aliens of the apotheosis in The Guy Who Didn't Like Musicals, and is sent as some sort of scout to figure out the weak points of society in Hatchetfield and figure out how the aliens are going to take over the world. It takes several years before Wiggly can fully dominate the society, and before the aliens can figure out how to get the meteor to crash land at the Starlight Theater in Hatchetfield. And that's when The Guy Who Didn't Like Musical takes place and shows that the aliens are body-snatching creepazoids who love singing and dancing and want to take over the world. Part of this is because there has been so much despoliation of the earth and just destruction of society, and they feel like by making everybody happy and musical, they can fix it. But of course, free will is the only way to keep society running, and so losing that ends up destroying the world as we know it. So the apotheosis begins in Hatchetfield, but spreads throughout the country and eventually the whole world, and those able to flee Earth do so and go to space, which is where Annie comes in. Now, Annie takes place several millennia in the future, after the initial Space Federation has fallen apart and Annie has taken over. Palpatine and Annie's Federation falls apart, and those left try to return to Earth and reclaim it as their old world. Between the events of Annie and Starship, there is a repopulation of the Earth and some sort of robot construction. And of course that malfunctions because the robots are human-hating machines, which leads to the Robot Wars. And so the Starship Rangers are founded in order to find a new inhabitable planet somewhere in this or other universes.
The future is now!
Starship takes place after a starship has crash landed on Bug's planet, and Bug learns how to speak the human language and teaches himself human mannerisms, and Starship ends up with Bug, an alien, and February, a human, in a relationship with one another. I believe that their descendants are Chorn's ancestors, and somehow they figure out a way to go back in time, and Chorn is sent as a messenger to the first humans in the Starkid universe to prevent them from making the same mistakes as their forebears and change the way of the future.
The Federation of Chorn seeded life on this planet 4 billion years ago. The High Lords of Chornozone calculated that any sentient life that would rise from here would inevitably become its own undoing.
That's all I have for you today. Thanks so much for watching. Bye!